Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thank you so much for joining in today. We have a very exciting guest, and we're going to get into some history and to some richness of natural plant-based products. So I'm excited to have Julia Fowler joining me today. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and I'm excited to talk about all the beautiful things that you're doing. And I want to give our audience some context so you know why I've invited Julia to the show. Julia is the founder and the president of Benedetta, and she's going to pronounce it properly so that we make sure we get the proper enunciation. But that means blessed in Italian. And she has the first and only skincare line formulated with 100% botanical, certified organic, and biodynamic ingredients. Like, that's impressive, really impressive. She has been a licensed esthetician and clinician since the 80s and 90s, I think, right? 80s, 90s, around those times. She found herself questioning the cosmetic and skincare industry's ethical approach to caring for the skin. And so she has gone out and taking this huge endeavor in finding the right products that, you know, are really good for our environment, but also for our skin. The acceptance of a botanical here and there and a preponderance of chemical and plastic-laden ingredients still considered all natural was illogical and unhealthy for Julia, which is why she has done what she's done. And I really want her to tell the story of this. But before I even go there, I do want to say this to our audience because it's really important that we do start checking like what those ingredients are and how we're using different products, whether it's body washes, skincare, whatever. And there's a great app. I'm going to give them a little promotion today. This was not planned, but I am going to give them a little promotion. And it's called Yuka, Y-U-K-A, so that you can actually have a look at what the ingredients are. And I've been using that a lot, Julia, myself, for different things like toothpaste and oral care and skincare. So lovely to have you on the show today. So thank you so much for being here.
This is such a joy. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. So let's jump in. So let's just start with, tell us why you do what you do and what has led you down this path.
You basically surmised it a little bit. You know, I was just disgusted with the chemical industry. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think there's a lot to be said about ingredients. But for me as a clinician, I did customized treatments. And I was also facilitating medical aromatherapy courses. Okay, so all things kind of converged at once. I became an esthetician so that I can work with this doctor of preventative medicine who was doing facial repatterning on stroke patients, her patients. She was actually a cardiologist also.
Oh, wow.
And a surgeon, and left that conventional thinking and went directly into preventative. She liked the term preventative medicine. You know, we hear that a lot. It's like that was almost 40 years ago. So we fast forward now, we're seeing on YouTube and whatnot, doctors coming forth and going, I'm done. I want a more holistic way. And so, you know, for me, it was the converging of these kind of people, finding my tribe, if you will. I don't think I've ever said that before, but, you know, it really was. And I started associating with this man who owned an essential oil company, but he was more than just owning an essential oil company. He was facilitating these courses with researchers that have been researching the medical efficacy of essential oils for, at that time, you're talking 1986, and at that time, 10, 15 years. So far ahead of the time. And aromatherapy was coined back in the 30s by Rene Gostafase, you know, so we bastardize it like we do when we chase trends. Mm-hmm. So I really came probably a few years in, at that forefront of really understanding what essential oils do. Not what we're hearing now, not a lot of the multi-level, not to say anything negative about them, but to really understand the botanical family and, of course, the chemistry. So I was immersed in all this at the same time. So as she's like, what skincare are you going to use on my clients? And I also had my own practice. I could not find anything. And we hear this a lot from producers. I've had people tap me on the back that are local producers and say, oh gosh, if I would have known you existed, I never would have created my line. I don't really believe that, but tell me that. Because I have read other people's bios. I don't make it a habit at all. But, I hear that a lot of people say that. And I was going into this interview, I didn't want to say, because there was such a need and I was meeting that need. It was really so much more advanced than that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Very intentional.
And also from a very young age, I was eating better. I was questioning doctors. I was on antibiotics for a very long time for a constant chronic strep throat, if you can imagine that. And
yes, can relate.
At a very young age, I questioned the doctors, and my parents were like, oh my gosh, my mom in particular, I'm so sorry. I don't know where she gets this stuff. So, sometimes I'll say, Benedetta is a divinely inspired line, because even though there was all this knowledge that I was just absorbing like a sponge, I couldn't read enough about essential oil efficacy. I started facilitating these courses for these masters, these people that were, doing aspiration, all European, French mostly, doing inhalations of essential oils. I do not suggest anybody ever do that here. And for me, it tied into our largest organ. So I always talk a lot about nutrition to people too, and energetic medicine. Because we are not just this, and we know that.
No, exactly. It's the whole being.
So what we ingest is important as what we put on our skin. Well, imagine in 1986, I started working for this company. So we had big companies buying essential oils because it was starting to trend. So I remember becoming, I wouldn't say close, but my associates were Redken. Redken, another type of big hair care. And of course, everybody was doing skincare, loaded with petrochems, loaded with plasticides, loaded with adulterates, vastly. But I would ask them, how do you marry these, try to get some information, because I would often be educating on essential oils and how to use them. By and large, after all of this information, people were typically just using them as aromatic fragrances, which we still do. And, you could ask me about the clean skincare industry, because even though it's so much better, if we're just looking at ingredients, then, the products that you can't recognize the chemical name. And don't get that confused with botanical chemical names. So we have to say the Latin on our labeling.
Oh, okay. Yes.
You look at that and think that's a chemical.
That's a good distinction. Very important.
But usually it's in parentheses. Some people will use it and then say the common name,
right?
Like apricot, or rosemary, Rosmarinus officinalis, and then it'll say rosemary.
Right. Yes.
You could tell that that's rosemary by that name. Anyway, not to be confused with that, but all of the chemicals, the carbamers, and then there are some that they don't even have to list.
Yeah.
But that they do deliver. And if there are essential oils in the formula, that's delivering into your bloodstream. So over the years, I've made other products like a deodorant. Because I didn't see that there was one that actually worked that was in the health food industry. And I started going to use one that, and then it was some years later, and that was 25 years ago, but there were some years later that we started seeing that in the breast tissue, there was aluminum, but nobody talked about the parabens that was in the breast tissue as well. So body can't recognize what isn't bioavailable, what it doesn't know. right? And it's not going to know chemicals. Think about it that way. So over the years, anyway, I'm going all over maybe, but, it all ties into, the why was that I started doing customized treatments because there was literally, and I had invested in a couple different lines. And then to find out that they were using carbamase or they were using, propylene glycol, because that's just, how else can we get the extract to, water. So it really did take me. In 1986, I created a hydrating elixir to bring her patients into hydration balance while they slept. That was really the impetus behind it. We didn't talk a lot about hydration. Estheticians talked about hydration, but nobody was addressing it. Now we talk hyaluronic. This is all botanical. We could talk about nutraceuticals and my stand on that too, because I have to stand on that. But in the botanical world, again, it's more efficient. So we test marketed on her clients and my clients for a year, and then it was distributed from 1987 to 1993. And then I had a sabbatical, and I took about 7-8 years in creating Benedetta. So then it was reintroduced when we created Benedetta.
Wow.
But when you go onto my website, maybe you did, we throw a lot of words around, been doing this for 30 years, but the first of its kind hydrating elixir was created almost 40 years ago.
Wow.
Which is so crazy. And, we would do trade shows. I became an educator for the company, and he was distributing it. It wasn't under my name, and it was under Crystal Radiance. And I had everybody interested in it, and copy it or try to, and didn't succeed. They didn't know what they were doing to succeed with it. It was a simple base product, but you have to know what you're doing.
Sure.
Understand function behind things. And I had the luxury of being able to do these customized treatments. And it just completely reawakened me to a point where after, a couple of years, I guess at that time, about 3 years, I was actually teaching part of the course in facial treatments. I called them treatments. And we had intake forms, and we really talked about the skin as a holistic organ. And that in skincare, everybody says, well, take care of it. It's your largest organ. But nobody addresses the why behind that. I don't see that. So I would like to tell your listeners that, along with ingredients, it's really important to ask the question, what is the design and function behind it? Because if you aren't marrying those ingredients correctly, even if they're certified organic, I've been at shows and I've heard people say, oh, it's certified organic, it's got to be good for your skin. And how many people have bought products and gone, clean products don't work. Well, it might be in the way that it's formulated. So I really, and I meet people all the time, and that's what I ask them. They say, I make my own skincare in the kitchen. I go online and I find a recipe. I call them formulas. And I'll say, well, how's that going for you? And I don't see that there's any protection.
Yeah.
So just quickly, I design for purification first. And a lot of companies will say you have to clean your skin first. You're not going to put a coat of paint on
dirty face or body.
So, our cleanser I designed for the professional to use in treatment. So we do a signature facial here. I have my hands on you for a good 10-15 minutes just with the cleanser. So I designed it that way. That was a good 4 years in the making to launch that. And it's 2/3 oil. It's just amazing. It was designed for a function. The function was to build circulation, move the lymph down at a core. And we've seen not having the age spots, I don't wear face makeup. I don't have that, but it's not just that, because we have I would say that's, if people are always asking me, what's your hero product? So they all, I don't like to divide. I'll say my starter kit.
Yeah. That way you get a little of everything.
You know,
Exactly.
yeah. And then if I could just, I'm not going to talk specific products, but, we're really about protection. Protection is not SPF. Protection is polyphenolic antioxidants. And we're hearing a lot about that. There's that cardiologist online talking a lot about that. But those that are bioavailable, not those that are a white nutraceutical powder. There's a difference, and that's a whole different podcast, really, honestly. Okay. But then hydration, and then more protection. Mm-hmm. And we find that the protection in the oil, so after you spray and you're wet, you add our oil. Okay. And that allows incorporation. And there's a delivery system, because if it's just sitting on top,
sure, where's it going?
Everything delivers. So if you're using SPFs, and of course they have essential oils in them because there's an aromatic profile, and people go, oh, look, this is so clean. There's essential oils in it. Essential oils open everything in their path.
Yes, and so that's
toxins are being delivered,
taken in as well, and that's a good point, Julia, because you mentioned that earlier, and I want us to focus on that for just a minute, because so often people assume because it says organic or it says clean that it is, and I know you talked about reading the labels, but that's that really goes back to, we trust that products are being curated, for certain reasons and with certain ingredients. And so as a just average consumer, how, beyond like having these conversations, how do we educate ourselves on the things that we're consuming or applying?
Thank you. I really, when people come in here, it's usually a few times. Some people will come in and they'll immediately go, oh my gosh. Yeah. They walk over to the product, they put it on, they're like, this is amazing. And I say, we don't fragrance anything. Everything you smell is part of the synergy. It's about synergistics.
Okay. Nice.
So I would, and in particular, because so many people are making, my esthetician makes her own line. Right? You could take a weekend course. You could go online now. I mean, I started doing this before there was an internet. So that gives me a little credibility, right? But,
some practice for sure.
An actual looking at the skin and see how it receives, a lot of back and forth. What I didn't want to, even in what I was being trained about certain essential oils being tonifying and sedative, not that they aren't, you don't mix them together. And I kind of went against that grain because I was having a different experience. So, it was a clinical experience for years to be able to marry these things together. And then see the results, see how it feeds your skin. And so now what's so great is I have 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years to say, yeah, it works. I'm a senior citizen and my skin is strong. And, we created, and I don't follow the trends. So I'm not constantly creating a product that has, 20% hyaluronic acid because that's going to make money because everybody's doing it. But then it gets convoluted. You get confused. So to your question, I would just be more discerning and asking those people questions. Why did you create this? Now, what people do, and this has been going on for so many years now, really since the 70s, is only talk about active ingredients. So you never hear me use that term. Because if you have 30 ingredients, 20 of which, or even one, is a caustic petrochem, what difference does it make? And usually those active ingredients they could be 2%.
Right.
It's a marketing, ginseng extract. And that ginseng extract is loaded with propylene glycol because that's really, getting into this, one of the reasons it took long wasn't so much of the formulas. It was trying to find suppliers and growers that didn't put extracts, because I want to do extracts, in propylene glycol. And unless I was a giant company nobody was paying attention to me. They were like, well, we'll put it in water for you. And I'm like, yeah, what water? Are you going to put it in tap water? So I learned to do my own. I actually got trained in making my own because there wasn't anything out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we make everything. We micro batch. They call small batch made now 1,000 products. We make like sometimes 200 at a time.
Right.
So you could think of Benedetta like going to your true farm to table restaurant where your waiter goes, "Excuse me, I'm going to go pick."
Yeah, you're going to dig it out of the ground.
That's
and
right.
Got it.
Analogy.
So
because it should be about function.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
within the regimen, because it's not just, you've ever noticed that there are products, they all use the same ingredients for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It almost smells the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about aromatic profile.
Mm-hmm.
I still get people, they'll smell it and go, oh, I like this one. Well, that's not the one for your skin, but I like the way it smells more. We're trained that way. So I think the longevity in Benedetta has been to kind of retrain the way people think.
Well, that is a big part of it. And because skincare is a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's massive, right? Like even when you go into, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, like when you go into a place like a Sephora, as an example, it's like, how do these young sales associates know anything, like truly, because there's thousands of products on their shelves and trying to figure out what works for the person, right? And so when you were talking about customizing that, I think that becomes super important. But also it's like, how do you stand out with all the noise that's going on? So even when you're talking about active ingredients or hyaluronic
acid.
Hyaluronic acid. Thank you. I was getting so tongue-tied there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you?
People like you bringing me on, I'm so grateful to you. Because I have truly been the farmer in the back 40.
Mm.
I said to someone the other day, they said, I don't understand why I did not know you existed. And I said, I do. I didn't start out with marketing. I started out with service.
Right.
We all know those restaurants or those farm stands, and they're just so altruistic. I feel so self-aggrandizing a little bit saying this.
No, that's okay. That's
really so true. And I think in the first 20 years, I launched in the health food industry because estheticians were all about chemical peels and glycolic acid. And here I've been doing these trade shows before launching, really feeling like I am a clinician. I want them. And even prior, 10 years earlier, I would do these trade shows and I couldn't even speak for a week after, trying to educate people on customized treatments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody heard anything I was saying. It was just when you're too ahead of the time, people just can't resonate when the louder megaphone is otherwise.
Yeah. And it's consistent.
The megaphone now is the clean skincare industry.
Yeah.
And they consider that. And I never say plant-based. I say plant realized because we're not based in anything. We don't have bases. You know what I mean? You can say plant-based if you think about it. But I understand when I need certain nutrients, I look for that. Or if I go to a restaurant, I get that it's our term. But there's just there is, it really just to distill it down and simplify, your care. And, I really truly believe in energetics, what draws people together. Mm-hmm. More and more people are really so confused about their skincare. Every day we hear this.
Well, as I had shared with and I had shared with you just some of the challenges that I was having where because for women, when your hormones change, then you run into this, skincare products you've used for years may have been fine, right? But then all of a sudden it's not working and you're having reactions to it. And so having, to your point, just paying more attention to what are we using, right? Even soaps and things, that is like, because you often will just go and pull off the shelf, right? Or, oh, it smells good, to your point, instead of actually looking at it and saying, what's in this? And how is that going to affect my body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Household chemicals.
Yes, all of it.
Chemicals. Do you know about the documentary Stink?
No, I don't think I've seen that or heard that one. No.
Give a reference. I'm not in it. I should be.
Okay.
I know some people that were in it. I didn't know about it for probably a year after it aired, but it's a story about the chemical industry, mostly our household products, our cleaning products, and the perfume industry. They do not have to put anything on the label. Mm-hmm. And they, it pretty much ends where certain big companies, big ones, I won't mention, but you know who they are, lobby against having to label. So skincare companies, hair care companies, food companies, we have to put what's on the label.
Yeah.
We don't. So, and now we have such a plethora of cleaning supplies and some of the people in that documentary are actually, sell those cleaning supplies. And just be mindful of that and wear gloves, because I think that might be, and you're inhaling it. Mm-hmm. So I think that could be a bigger issue. Some of the things we think are clean because the diatribe in our commercials are just so powerful. And even when you're not even watching those commercials, because we flip through them, I just think there's this mass understanding of these things and people just don't think it's wrong if the FDA doesn't crack down on it,
Well,
and we wonder why.
That's a good point.
Anyway, plug for clean. I don't make any of those things. I just,
No, but what I hear you is being conscientious, because that is also impacting your largest organ, right?
Yeah.
And so it's being aware of that. And so it's not just the skincare is what I'm hearing you say, right? Pay attention in all aspects of how you're
going into our airways.
Exactly.
And how it's getting, this is a sponge.
Yeah.
We're getting that. So I took it really seriously. And to your point about how to Sephora staff, how to Whole Foods staff, they get trainings.
Yeah.
They get trainings. And in those trainings, you can say anything you want.
Well, that's my point.
The marketing need of the conglomerate at the time. And so you may not be getting, the right information. Mm-hmm. And so what that does, to my point, is that people come in and say who to trust, how to know.
Right.
So I really just get down in, and I offered you too, just call me up. I'm here, and my staff is really knowledgeable too. We had somebody with atopic dermatitis that for 5 months couldn't heal. And she exhibited like a burn victim. It's on our website. You can see it under our anti-inflammatory. And I took her because she was 5 months on cortisone, prednisone, and broad spectrum antibiotics.
Ooh.
And her skin had fissures and bleeding, and she was beside herself. You can imagine.
Of course.
And she's never done anything to take care of her systemic health or her skin. And so she went to an acupuncturist, really great guy, really helps a lot of people. But, after a couple months, he sent her to me.
Right.
And you can see the before and after picture. And I'm not advocating that everybody that had, this is a medical condition, seek your holistic practitioner. I always say that first. But we really need to address it internally. And, I was able to get the heat that I said, my goal here is just to get the heat out of your face, heat out of your face. And that was what built the trust. Yeah. So she built the trust in me and allowed me to put my hands on it.
Yeah. And that's amazing.
It felt like she had 104 fever, and we kind of cleared it up. But it took a little while, but I thought 3 months, and it was 2.5 weeks.
Wow. Congratulations. I'm sure she was overjoyed. Yeah.
And she did do some things systemically.
Nice. Not well, because it is the whole body, right? And that I said that earlier, and I think that's super important that people realize it's not just the face; it's things that are going on within the body, and so holistically looking at, right, like my daughter's going through that right now because she's having hormonal changes and has, like she's dealing with that, and so she's looking at it in all aspects, like the food that she's taking in, like hydration, to your point, like how much water she drinks, all of these different components, because all of it contributes to the whole
Yes.
body. Yeah.
Yes. From my earliest writings, I talked about systemic health.
Yeah.
And that's really advanced over the years. We know so much more about good probiotics, which ones to take, shift them out. We know about certain herbs. We know that dairy isn't our friend when it's oxidized. Oxidized meaning the gummy pizza, so, little shifts, not to shame anybody for doing it, but just have no cheese on it if your daughter's breaking out, but add raw cheese on it. So little baby steps so that you don't feel like your life is being torn
Deprived.
apart. You can have a play date.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of teens
Yeah.
that tend to go in that direction. But this is our visible indicator.
Exactly. 100%.
And it's like we tend to look at our skin and go, well, if it isn't broke, why fix it? I love my skincare. I'm 30 years old. I'm 40 years old. I'm 50. I'm 60. I'm 70. And I get the 70 years old and they're like, well, my skin's not going to look like yours because I haven't been using your line. I'm like, no, this is about feeding your skin. This is about nourishment at a core level and knowing how to do it.
Right.
So I agree with you. Look at your ingredients on your food, if you could, on your detergent, but
Right.
At least stay away from scents and that sort of thing in detergents, I guess. That would be a good to start. But look at the ingredients, but also just look at and this thing with star rating, we're all 5 stars.
Yeah.
We have like 4 or 5 because we don't falsify them and we don't pay for them and we don't. I'm just saying how it is.
Right.
You asked the question, how do you separate, how do you?
Yeah, no, exactly. So these are all good things for our audience to be paying attention to, right? So I am cognizant of our time and we'll need to wrap up here, but can you, before we do, like share with us, because you talked about, and I'm probably not going to say it right, Julia, gentian and how that works and why is that important?
We don't. So the same doctor hired me to use a TENS machine, which they still have in practice, microcurrent.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Out there. And she wanted and a great thing to do, especially for people that, have stroke.
Mm-hmm.
So she was also trying to get them off of some of their meds, doing other kinds of therapies and whatnot. And so really, literally, that's what she did. Well, I wasn't a fan of the machine. I didn't like plugging it in.
And the current and got it. Yes.
Also, what we're trained very little on massage techniques and whatnot. And I've already taken courses on acupressure. So I took a course on Jinshin for the whole body. And then I opted in and asked them if they would teach me an extra course on facial rejuvenation, typically just facial rejuvenation. Okay. So I took an extra and I kind of honed that in to the most important points on the face. And so in our treatments, we do those, but we also do biofield tuning, which is using weighted tuning forks on those same points and even around those points. So in a nutshell, Jinshin is acupressure, bilateral acupressure.
Okay.
Bilateral.
Okay. Makes sense.
And when you're trying to release the neck or whatever, it's not just neck points. It could be lung points. You could have a point here and a point under your arm, but they're still bilateral.
Okay.
Face, I typically will do just obviously on each side. So I simplify it down At home use, we do something called an open mouth resistance. So whenever you're applying your product, because I want you to get the best use of your cleanser, let's say, and all of your oils and moisturizers, and particularly your antioxidant oil, which is going to deliver deeper and filter UVA and UVB rays.
Okay.
At a core level, I do want to say like a second on SPFs and what they actually do. It's a different way of thinking. But Jinshin, so an open mouth resistance, I'll just show you and give this gift to you. It allows you not to do this when you're putting product on. It allows you to almost have this, we call our products Massage-In. The cleanser is called Rosemary and Geranium Massage-In Cleanser.
Okay.
Now the front just says cream cleanser for most people. But the back, it has our regular, and the Massage-In is important. But when you do this, it's really lovely.
Okay.
Do it all day long. It does strengthen your neck muscles. I've noticed that over the years. But it allows the incorporation of products. So you have little bands of muscles, you have bigger bands here. So you're giving yourself a good facial. So it's
okay. So audience that is listening and you're not seeing this.
below the eyes, and you basically, you can see it on our website. We have it in all our brochures. It's basically opening your mouth to a comfortable position, making an O, and cupping your lips around your teeth. It's just a resistance. It gives a resistance to the rosorius or the nasal label fold.
That's a great tip.
And also it just opens it up. So then when you're using in particular our cleanser, which builds circulation, you're going to see some effects a little bit better.
Nice.
Clear that out pretty quickly.
Okay.
And then so it's more about that pressure, So anyway, there's that.
I love that.
That came out of me doing, the 4 pounds of pressure on certain points. Here's a couple. Zygomatic ridge is a really big one. So when I'm doing a treatment, I'm leaning in on that. Most people say, "Oh, feels really great," and then I massage out if it's a little too intense. So acupressure works. This is a meridian system. We have this pathway of energy. People know about acupuncture, acupressure, this meridian system. So we're adhering to these points along these pathways that open it up and allow everything to be better.
Love it.
So if I want it to be, if it's about circulation or it's about protection. And so just a quick word on protection. We need to protect the mitochondria, the cell-to-cell communication. So when we can protect the cell-to-cell communication, the oxidative stress isn't going to be there so much. And oxidative stress is free radical damage.
Right.
And it's that damage that causes not the cells to communicate and synapse with one another. The electricity kind of goes out a little bit, right? We don't want those oxidative oils in our system. We certainly don't want them on our skin. So if we're baking in the sun and we have SPFs on with essentials in it, usually, that's going into your bloodstream. So I wrote an article on it, and it was published by Dermoscope magazine, and they're very, very conventional, very, very medical spa, dermatologists, and I was really thrilled they asked me to write that.
Maybe you could share that with us, Julia, and we could share that with our audience that subscribes to our newsletter.
I would love to do that.
That would be a great share.
Under Benedetta Buzz, and then it's just under news.
Okay.
And, but I'll share the link with you. I'll do a hyperlink or something.
That'd be perfect.
This call, but basically I point the finger because it's a very short one page. 800 words. I wanted 5,000, but I may have written a blog where I extended it, but in any case, I point a finger to real studies. I've known this for probably more than 25 years. So we don't use SPFs, but here's the thing. SPFs keep you from burning. And in this article, I cite the study And the study was an abstract study by 5 PhDs that's called What's More Toxic, the Sun or the Sunscreens? So this is new information. It isn't to me, it isn't to some, it isn't to the holistic community. So people will say, well, what do? I don't want to burn.
Right.
So there are tools not to burn. We're not saying that what we do are blocks, but they are filters.
Okay.
In normal daily occurrence, this idea of reapplying 50s is kind of have a different view of that.
Okay.
So please,
well, I'd be interested to read it.
Yeah. I want to take care of people, their skin.
You
right?
can tell. You can
really
tell.
Work. And so that was always a really big deal. And we noticed with just our oil and our moisturizer together that if we didn't put it here, that we would burn and we would burn here. And I'm not calling it a block, but in this article, they cite that these bioavailable antioxidants actually filter UV rays. And there's other information about that too to look out for. And so we have our Umbra del Soleil series, just a little shameless plug, but this is about really feeding the skin, even if you're going to use a zinc because you're going to be on a boat for 8 hours.
Right.
Which I was in Hawaii. I still didn't use the zinc. I'm pretty hardcore. We have solutions to kind of,
support that.
Protect at the core of where it needs protecting. We don't want those basal cells. We don't want the fine lines, we don't want the age spots. And we are under the assumption that using these SPFs keep that from happening. They do keep you from burning if they can do that.
That's a great point.
And there's more information I could go on about it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No. I think that's a great tip, and we'll wrap. Well, that's okay. No, because I've heard some of that myself lately, and I think that's a great way. If you share that with us, then we'll share that with our audience for sure. I do have to wrap us up. I'm so sorry. This is great conversation and so much information. Yes, no,
so much information.
You do. You have a ton of information, and so. Julia, what is the best way if our audience has questions or they want to learn more? What is the best way for them to reach you?
They could go to www.benedetta.com, BENEDETTA.com. And we're just, of course, revamping our website in the next few months. So hopefully it'll be good. But we have our, all our contact.
Perfect.
Sales at Benedetta. We have all sorts of, we do a blog, and we're really hands-on.
Nice.
Really customer service. We're not going to let you. I mean, if for some reason it went to voice, we call you back.
Nice.
Our hours in California, and we really invite people. We're in the San Francisco Ferry Building. If you're doing a trip to Sonoma County and you're tasting wine or whatever, eating good food,
stop in to see you.
Oh my gosh. I love it so much. And I'm always here on the weekends. We're closed on Mondays. This is a good day.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. So audience, you've heard Julia, you know where to find her. If you have questions or you're curious to learn more information, you can go on the website, take a look. We'll put that in our show notes as well. And listen, I want to thank you, Julia, for being here today. I know we took your time and we really appreciate you sharing with the audience and with myself. So thank you for that. And audience, I want to thank you for being here. We know you have a choice as to what you chime into, what you're listening to, what you're sharing. And so thank you for doing that with us. And don't forget to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing, because that's how we keep growing is when you keep us out there and in the forefront. So thank you for that. And so I did mention our newsletter, and that's a great way for you to find out additional information about WIL Empowered. But we often will have guest articles. So Julia will share that with us, and we'll put that in our newsletter. So you can register for that on the WIL Empowered, which is 1L, womeninleadershipempowered.com. You can register on the website to receive that monthly newsletter. We don't bombard you with tons of things, but monthly we will send you. And it also recaps all the wonderful podcast guests that we've had on. So if you miss someone, that'll give you an opportunity to catch up. So thank you everyone for being here. Julia, thank you again. Thanks for all the work you're doing to change the industry and for sharing your wealth of information with us.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you at the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast.
Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.willempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.